Salut. Ça va? Santé.
Coucou, bienvenue from France. Welcome back to the show where we talk about life, different perspectives, and un petit peu de français, usually with a glass of wine and sometimes with a spritz. Thank you. Welcome back to the show. We're happy to have you back. Today, we are going to do a Q&A, which I'm excited about. You guys asked so many good questions. So I posted a few days ago, just any questions you want to ask. I'm going to try to do these maybe once a month, once every 2 months. Let me know what you guys think after we do it together. But I think it's just always fun to know what's on your mind and any way I can help. As I mentioned in another episode, really the reason I wanted to do this podcast is because when we were considering moving abroad, I felt really alone and did not have many resources and just really wanted to change that for any of you listening, for those of you who live abroad, those of you who dream about living abroad, those of you who are traveling abroad, or those of you who are making the big move in the future. I just want to kind of be here as a resource. So I love all your questions and comments. I love this community and just wanted to say thank you guys for listening. So I thought it would be fun today to do our Q&A where we're going to answer each of your questions. And before we get into that though, I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about summer camps because I'm getting a lot of questions from families who are coming to Provence for the summer or maybe a couple weeks and they want to put their kids in camp, or my American friends who are like, what do you do with your kids during the summer? Are there such a thing as camps in France? And so just a lot of questions. So I thought I would just spend a minute on what my kids have done in the past, what they're doing this summer, and let me know if you find this interesting. But I, like many of you, kind of have this like calendar of what weeks and when the kids are going to camp and what I'm going to do. And as much as I try to not be super American about it, like, planning out the day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, I do think kids need some structure, but I also think they need some freedom. And so I'm trying to sort of have that balance. And because I work part-time, I can kind of arrange that accordingly. But the camps in France are very, I would say, somewhat similar and somewhat different. So the most common camp in France is something called a multi-sport camp. And this is not necessarily all of France. I'm speaking again to the south and specifically to the Provence region. So they have something called multi-sport camp. And so they do literally, as it sounds, they swim. They sometimes have cool things like horseback riding, golf, basketball, football, that's soccer, then just like kind of running and hula hoop kind of games. And they rotate through those. The camps are either half day or full day. The half day is until like 8:30 to noon. And then the full day is like 8:30 to 5:30. So it's a long camp day. My first year, I made the mistake of putting them in a camp that did not have air conditioning, and it was August. And I swear my kids that like had heat stroke like every day. Not really, but like you get the idea. It was so hot. They were so like red every day and they were outside almost all day besides the swimming hour. So that was really challenging. I learned my lesson. The next year I put them in a multi-sport camp, but it was air conditioned. So I would say half the day or kind of in between activities, they would go inside and have like a little like a break from the day of like, they'd either color or draw or play games, etc. inside. They like that a little better. I wouldn't say my kids are huge multi-sport fans. And so this year I did more research and really tried to find kind of unique camps that I also didn't have to drive super far to. So this year my kids are doing what's called Niki Surf, which is an indoor surfing camp, which seems pretty cool. I don't know anything about it. So it's like half the day is like an indoor surf camp. And then the other half of the day, they get to choose their activities. And it's at this place called Decathlon Village. Decathlon, for those of you that are familiar, is a big sports brand boutique in France. And they have retail stores as well as they have like outdoor activities like climbing, zip line. Let me see what else. They have horseback riding, like all kinds of activities. And so anyways, in this camp in the afternoon, they get to choose kind of what activity they want to do, which I think they'll be pretty hopefully excited about. And then my son's really into building, and I found this like architecture camp that he's going to do. And then there's a whole one about Legos. That is another one that I'm going to sign my kids up for. And then the last one is my daughter's kind of into theater. They actually have an English speaking theater group that they are going to perform Annie. So she does all the production set and then gets to sing and perform on stage. So hopefully that should be cool. They're kind of unique ones. It's interesting because unlike the US where I signed up for camp, like the minute they opened in January, like I have more freedom to maybe sign up like the week before if I want. So I've got them signed up for a few that they'll be attending soon, but then the rest I kind of left open to sort of see how they feel, see what they like, and then I can still make the call almost up to the week before to put them in the camp. So that's not true with all of them, but it is true with like some of them. So I'm kind of winging it, I would say, a bit more this year. And I don't know, talk to me at the end of the summer and see how I feel. But okay, let's get to your questions. Okay, our first question. Jenna MG wrote, what is your typical daily schedule? How do you structure your day? Oh, Jenna, this is a good question. It's really different from the US. The US, I was usually rushing off to an office most of the time, or when I was working for myself, I would say like back-to-back all-day meetings. Now, because of the time difference, I don't have meetings during the day. If I do have meetings, they're at night, usually starting somewhere between 3 and 5 o'clock, which isn't ideal, and they can go much later than that. But so my days are actually open because of the time difference with working with the United States. So my typical day, I usually wake up around 6:40, 6:45. I set an alarm and I get the kids ready for school. It's like a really quick bit of like a military operation just to get out the door because they have to be out the door by 7:30. And then either my husband takes them on the electric bike to the bus if we're in a rush, because that goes really quick. Or I walk them to the bus and then they are allowed to kind of ride their scooters or bikes to the bus stop. The bus stop is about a mile and a half from our house. So it's a bit of a walk for the kids, but that's kind of the way we start the day. My morning routine with the kids is like, I usually have to wake them up because they're tired. I get up before them so I can like have their breakfast prepared. I lay out their clothes. They then brush their teeth, put their clothes on, grab their backpacks, and head out the door. Then I come back, and this is my new routine that I've been doing for the last maybe 6-7 months that I love. I come back and I kind of decompress because the mornings like are a lot, and I find my most creative energy is in the morning. And so I come back. If it's winter, I light a candle. I turn on music, like kind of, I call it like my writing mix, which is sometimes instrumental, sometimes just like good thinking type music. And I bring out my journal and I take 3 deep breaths, and then I write like just whatever's on my mind. I do what's called, I don't know if any of you have read like Julia Cameron's book, The Creative Act, but she talks about do your morning pages every single morning, and it's write at least 3 pages in your journal. And I love this so much. It's like my new favorite, not new, because I've been doing those morning pages for a while. I just find it's really like both therapeutic, and sometimes I write things that are on my mind, and sometimes it like helps me just plan for what I want to do next or what I need to be doing. And anyways, it's just a good like clarity exercise. Then after that, I then go into my, I would say more serious like writing, whether that's like as I'm working on my book or writing a Substack article. And then depending on the day, like I typically will plan out like what I'm doing for our podcast that you're listening to right now. And sometimes I like to write out episodes before I talk about them so that my thoughts are much more clear. And so my creative energy is in the morning. I also like to work out in the morning. That's usually like late morning. So then I do kind of multiple different things for a workout. I come home from my workout and then usually make lunch for my husband and I, or kind of just order in lunch. Lunch is like a very, I don't know, it's a challenging meal because I don't want to make it a big thing. Once in a while, I'll go out to lunch with a friend, probably once a week, which is really nice. And then the afternoons are kind of my productive time, like whether I have client work or need to get stuff done for like the kids, admin sort of stuff. That's like my time to do that. But I try to allow for creative time in the mornings, my workout, and then I would say more like work administrative stuff in the afternoon. And then I pick the kids up from the bus, or my husband does, at usually 4:15 is when the bus comes in. On normal days, on late days, they get in around 5:15, 5:20, and then come home. And the kids, one of us usually sits with the kids for homework because they're not quite self-sufficient to do their homework by themselves, while the other person cooks dinner. We kind of alternate. If I have work calls, my husband will cook dinner and do homework. And then it's usually, bath time, bedtime. And at night, I try to watch at least 15 to 30 minutes if I'm going to watch TV with my husband. If he's not traveling for work, we'll watch in French because we really are trying to learn French. So we then will watch a show in French. If we have time, we'll watch a show in English after, and then we usually go to bed around like 10:30, 11. So that's kind of a typical day. Other days, I take French, twice a week. I have appointments. I have, normal life things that I do during the day. But that's kind of, I would say, a typical day for me. I actually wake up liking my days so much more than I did in the US. The weather here makes me really happy. The culture moves slower, so I don't feel this as much pressure that I have to accomplish 8 million things that day. So that's sort of how I would say I structure my day and what's a typical weekday for me. Okay, second question. This is from Camille La Cisoline. She said, how do you manage to get such fit arms? Fit arms. Okay, this one I laughed out loud because I was I have never liked my arms. I will say I've liked them more in the last year since I've been doing this one thing that's been different. So I was reading that over 40, and I'm in my early 40s, that you should change the way you work out. And I've worked out my whole life. I like working out. It's like a mental de-stress for me. It feels good. It's definitely something I enjoy. And it also, for me, I don't necessarily, I eat healthy, but I'm not my husband, for example, super diligent about how and when he eats. I'm much more lackadaisical about it. I follow kind of an 80-20 rule. I try to eat healthy 80% of the time, 20%, whatever. It's probably also more 70-30. But so I think working out allows me that flexibility to sort of, if I want a pain au chocolat, I'm going to eat a pain au chocolat. If I want to have a glass of wine at night, I'm going to have a glass of wine and not worry too much about calories and all of that. In fact, since we moved to France, this is the first time in my life I've never counted calories in my life. I don't follow a specific keto or that kind of thing. I'm not yo-yo dieting. I'm not 1 week not eating and then the next I'm going crazy. I would say much more consistently. I do still I follow still my American habit of weighing myself once a week, and I record it. I've been doing this for probably 10 years. I know that sounds psycho, but I think it's just my way of monitoring if something's getting, it's more now to be oh, is it getting way too high and I need to scale back, more than, oh my gosh, I have to be at this number. I'm less concerned about the number, more just about the time, the trend over time. So that said, the new thing I've been doing, and I've been doing this about a year, and I heard about it from a friend of mine, Lukey, if you're listening. She's my Australian friend that used to live in France, and I miss her every day. She told me about this app called Ladder, Ladder. I can put it in the show notes as well. I really like it because you can pick your coach, you can pick what style of workout, and then it's just 30 minutes, and you really only have to, the mandatory ones are only 3 days a week, and it's weights. So after 40, I think it's important to incorporate weights, and they're kind of a mix of light and heavy weights, and they have a structure that you're kind of building to, and they do a shred series, and they have different 6-week series. And so I've been doing this and I've been liking it, and I've been happier with my arms than I have been. I would normally never wear things without sleeves because I never liked my arms, but this app seems to kind of be working. So I would recommend. I also have been reading, and I just recently started doing this, that as you kind of enter, I don't know, your early 40s, even later, the way to burn fat is different. So you have to incorporate fast fat burning things. So I've been doing sprints. I sprint up a hill by my house 8 times and then do weights. That's pretty hellish. I'm not going to lie. I don't really love it, but I do think it's kind of been effective for what they call the afterburn. So I do that as well. And then Isabel, if you're listening, you guys know Isabel, she had a baby and she's been trying to kind of just build back strength, and she's been doing reformer Pilates pretty close to my house. And so she's been asking me to go. So I started going to that with her once a week. And I've actually really liked it. I was never really a big reformer Pilates person. I was much more, I would say in the US, like a big, like I loved Barry's boot camp. I loved like HIIT workouts. I loved anything where it was like high energy. And I thought reformer Pilates was kind of like boring, but I actually find it like really hard and soothing at the same time. It's like a weird combo, but I'm into it. So those have been kind of my combination of things, as well as like, just trying again to eat healthy, as much as I can. And yeah, so that's that, Camille. But thank you for your comment. That was such a nice compliment. It made me very happy. Okay. Next question from Mama Lab. Have you found an editor to publish your book? Oh, thank you for asking about my book. This has been an ongoing thing for me. I'm kind of like up and down. I really love writing. I want to write a book. I was originally writing this book last year that I submitted to publishers and agents, and it was called Lean Out. And the whole idea was kind of the antithesis of Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. Like I wanted women to feel empowered to do what they believe in, not necessarily have to take a seat at the corporate table. And this was like super important to me. And so I wanted to write a bit of like a memoir, cultural manifesto about giving women kind of the permission to feel comfortable leaning out. And I wrote like, I would say over half of that book. And I was realizing that this memoir style writing, while I enjoyed it, was not necessarily completely the direction I wanted to take my writing in. And so I started to more write, I would say, like cultural manifesto and personal essays that I've been sharing on Substack. And I really loved writing those. And I write sort of more in the moment of like what's coming to my head and what I'm thinking about. And that's been really enjoyable. And so I've been recently focusing on that and then thinking about how I curate maybe that type of content into a compelling book. But I'm definitely still, my absolute goal is like, I really want to write a book. I want to be able to share with women both my story and like a cultural story that I know we're all in a lot of these, same situations together. And I just think it's really important that we bring together a community. And I just really would love to share that through my writing. So to answer your question directly, I have not found an editor to publish my book. I have also not been in like an outreach of trying to find someone at this point. I'm focusing much more on the writing itself. And I feel like when I'm ready to then put it all together, I am between like, I would love to go the traditional publishing route. I also, though, struggle with if that's even possible. And I don't want to lose like complete creative freedom. And so I've also debated self-publishing. So I have a lot of paths that I'm thinking about. If any of you are in this world or have anything to share, please send me a note. I really would love to chat with you, to learn more. It's definitely a new venture for me, but I love it. Like it's definitely my passion and I'm very happy to have found that. I think podcasting and writing go so hand in hand, and I'm really like, this is definitely something I wake up excited about. Like I do this on the weekends because I enjoy it and it's just so different than any type of work I've ever done in my life. And so I just think that's important to share. There is kind of like, if you're sitting in a corporate grind, I know what that's like, and you will find like what makes you happy and excited to get up every day. And like, it's been a journey for me, but I really love these two things. So anyways, thank you for your question, and, keep me posted if you know anyone that might be interested in chatting with me about my book. Okay. Next question. Annalise Wester. How are nurses viewed in France compared to the US? That is a very interesting question. I'm not in the healthcare industry. I don't know that much about this. I would say nurses, at least in my experience in France, are highly valued. I don't think there's like a big discretion between nurses and doctors in terms of like hierarchy. I think nurses are very much perceived, very favorably. I will default, though, to a friend of mine who's in healthcare. So let me come back to you, Annalise, on this question, because there's obviously, you have something that you're looking, to answer behind it. And I would love to be able to share more. So I'll come back to that in a future episode for you on that one. Next question. This is from TLC Tiger 02. Are you planning to stay in X indefinitely? Would you move back to the US? And there's a related question. from El Mencini. Do you think your family will go back to the US now that you're enjoying true work-life balance? You guys, these are such good big questions because these are conversations that I would say are just very top of mind. We are going to the US this summer, and I know everyone's going to ask me this. Mom, if you're listening, I don't want to mislead you or give you an answer that's false. I would say we don't know is like the real answer. But I would say we are leaning toward staying in France or in Europe for the foreseeable future. We are really happy here. Our kids are thriving. My husband is starting a company here. And I don't know, there's the biggest draw for me going back to the US are kind of is twofold. Like it would be family and friends would be my number one. And I would say that's a huge challenge here. My number two would be I don't know, I got this like nightmare that my kids were not going to feel American. And I don't know what that even means. And I'm going to explore this through my writing. But as you start to kind of, the kids get older and you start to plan, it's like, oh, do you want your kids to go to American university? Or do they know what American holidays there are? Like, and does that matter? And so you start to ask yourself these questions. And my husband and I are on like, I don't know, I would say like slightly different pages sometimes about it. Like, I think there's so many good things about being an American, and he's American as well, but would say like, well, we're both Americans, so our kids are going to feel American without us ever having to like live there again. And sure, maybe that's true. I don't have the answer to this, but I do think that is a really big question of when you live somewhere else, you're raising what's called third culture children. So they're born in one culture, they're being raised in another culture, and they kind of feel like a bit of both. And maybe even like, especially my daughter, who's the younger one, probably will, if the longer we live here, feel a bit more French than even American, which is very interesting, right? And so I think for now we are seeing how it goes. I think a lot depends on my husband's job, the schooling. I would say as the kids get older, I love X. We are craving, like we were in New York and San Francisco, we're craving somewhat of a bigger city feel. However, I'm not sold that that's right for kids. Like part of the reason we moved to X is because it's just so wonderful for kids, like to live in a smaller city. And it's safer, it's cleaner, they have more freedom. The schools are much more like outdoorsy, and, we get the ability to live like in a small city, but still have like a garden and a pool. And so anyways, it's a really hard decision. I'm not like feeling this tremendous draw of I have to move back tomorrow. There's so many things I would say that like my nervous system has completely like de-escalated a lot in France. I love like the ability to kind of combine creative ventures with some work with like my life in general here, that the idea of like going back to the American like rat race and me getting like back into a big like corporate marketing job honestly kind of makes me anxious and not something I'm desiring right now. That said, like, I don't know, things could change quickly and the world's changing. And, I think family situations are also super important. And so TBD, but good question. And I will keep you guys posted on this, but I would say we're at least, here for the foreseeable future. Okay. I'm a Francophile, has another question. Why did you choose France when you and your husband decided to leave SF? Okay, this is such an interesting story that it's like looking back, I'm like, that was kind of an interesting decision. So we could have lived anywhere. We were only going to go for a year. It was meant to be a bit of like a sabbatical from the craziness after COVID and working insane jobs and like giving our kids a cultural experience. And we had decided on Western Europe just because we really like Western Europe in general. I had lived in Spain when I was in university and college. My husband had lived in Italy. And so I spoke Spanish. He tells me he spoke Italian, but I'm yet to see that. There's very little Italian. But anyways, at the time we were like, you know what? And we had visited France multiple times. We just always loved it. We loved the culture. We loved the food. I would say it's like even like the fact that the French like definitely work hard, but they also like value decompressing and pleasure and finding the little joys in life. It was like a good balance from that respect that we could identify with. And so we thought, okay, let's decide on France because it might be cool if neither one of us speaks the language, which looking back, I'm like, were we like, was that a good decision and we thought, and here was the rationale. We thought if neither one of us spoke the language, then we would both be learning together. And so neither like partner has an upper hand. It's not like if we moved to Spain, I'd be like, oh, I got this. I'm going to show us around. I can like communicate with everyone, and vice versa if we had moved to Italy. And so we thought maybe if we were both equal, it might be a fun adventure that we're learning the language together. Our kids could see that we're learning the language. They'd be learning the language. It would be like a whole family learning opportunity together. That sounded really good in theory. We then looked at, so then I focused on France and I looked at like 5 to 6 cities in France. And then it became much more about the schools. Like, and we wanted to send our kids to an international bilingual school so that they would be exposed. They would still have English, but they would be exposed and learn French. So then we just did a lot of research on schools. My husband was definitely like, well, let's just do Paris. That makes sense. We've lived in New York. We're coming from San Francisco. And I was actually the one who was like, yes, the schools are good in Paris, but I don't really want to live in Paris at this moment in my life. I love Paris, don't get me wrong. But with 2 young children, our kids had just turned 4 and 6. The thought of going to a big city and living that life again, apartment living, subways, et cetera, I don't know, it felt like a lot. And so I was like, no, I actually don't want to do Paris. I'd rather pick a smaller city where we can walk everywhere and where our kids have freedom and the schools might be different and it feels a little bit more like kind of, slower living. And so then I would say a year before we moved, my husband and I took a trip alone. We left my kids with my parents and we had submitted applications to 5 different international schools. I would say within both North and South France. We decided on Aix because a couple of reasons. One, we had family friends here from my husband's mother. We kind of knew this couple that had lived here and were still living here and were sort of willing to help us and take us under their wing, which definitely helped a lot. They helped us find this awesome house we're in and just get acclimated, like drove us through different neighborhoods when we were deciding where to live. And that was super helpful. So that was like definitely a push in this direction. Then we just really loved the school. We felt like it was a really beautiful, like both academic yet creative school that we found here. So that was a big draw. And then we just really loved the city. Like the city of Aix feels like a mini Paris. It's like beautiful, clean, magical, like has a lot of the same shopping as Paris, like great restaurants, culture. So that was the reason we picked here and zero regrets. Like sometimes I still have like a lot of like pinch me moments. I love this city so much. And I think it was definitely a good choice. Okay. Itineraries by Hannah has her next question. I'd love to hear a little bit more about motherhood in France versus the US. Love the podcast. Oh, thank you, Hannah. That's super sweet. Okay. I feel like I should do a whole episode on motherhood in France versus the US because there are just so many different things about being a mother here than in the US. So let me just name a couple that are more personal of like things I've changed as a mom here that I don't think I necessarily would have in the US. So one is I worry a lot less here about my kids in multiple ways. So I used to worry about safety at school. There was literally active shooter drills. Like I would really worry about that. I used to worry about like where my kids were relative to other kids, like both academically, socially, sports, like in every aspect of their life. Like, were they keeping up? Like, was I enrolling them in like the right extracurricular activities? Was their day balanced enough? Like, it was constant. I would worry about what they were eating, like if it was healthy enough and was I getting them enough fruits and vegetables and were they taking this vitamin? And that was a worry. Then I would worry about like they were young, but just I didn't necessarily feel comfortable like giving them any little bit of freedom. Like I felt like they needed to be by my side. Like even if they would like run, in the playground for a bit, I would like always have my eye on them just to make sure I knew where they were. A lot of that has been so much more lax here. Like I just trust a lot more. Like I feel like I'm adopting a bit more of the French mom perspective where you raise your kids the best you can. You raise them in an environment that's good. And then you sort of like let go of a lot of things. Like I don't really worry as much like if my kids, I know they're not exposed to as many extracurricular activities as they were in the US. And I'm honestly okay with that. Like I would rather have like less anxious, happy kids than be shoving them like to 8 million activities just to get them exposure for what might help them in the future. Like it's just too much for me personally. With regard to food, they eat at school like a 3-course healthy meal every day. And that makes me feel so much better than when I was like packing a lunch and they would never eat it. And then I didn't know like what they would actually eat. And so I can like, and then I know I'm cooking like really local and healthy at night. And that just like takes a lot of that anxiety out.